Quite often, a big money takeover of a football club is quite the cause of excitement for their supporters, with the perfect example being Geordies turning up in keffiyeh and brandishing Saudi flags outside St James's Park. However, sometimes it can all go so horribly wrong. Welcome to Halftime Football, where today we'll be taking a look at 5 takeovers that promised so much but ended so badly. Number 5. Malaga 2010. Malaga have historically been sort of a yo-yo club, constantly switching between La Liga and the Segunda Division. That's why there was mass hysteria when Sheikh Abdullah bin Nasser Al Thani, worth a reported £1 billion, invested in the Andalusian outfit. His €36 million investment saved the club from financial peril, and suddenly stars such as Santi Cazorla, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Isco and Jeremy Toulon began taking to the turf at La Rosaleda, while Manuel Pellegrini, a man who had just achieved a tally of 96 points with Real Madrid, ended up in the dugout. While the 2010-11 season was mediocre with an 11th place finish, the team still showed vast improvement from their prior campaign, during which they survived in La Liga by just 1 point. In Pellegrini's first full season with the club, he guided them to a 4th place finish, which meant that Malaga would be in the Champions League for the first time in their history. They would reach the quarterfinals and play Dortmund, and they were 2-1 up going into injury time in the second leg at the Signal Iduna Park. However, an unbelievable comeback followed, and Felipe Santana scored an offside goal in the 93rd minute to break Malaga hearts. They still ended 6th in La Liga that season, meaning a spot in the Europa League, but even worse was to come, as despite the massive net worth of Abdullah Al Thani, it was soon discovered that the club was still struggling financially. Due to suddenly investing hugely in the transfer market, the club were making losses because they didn't equate that with commercial value. Another issue was with unequal TV money, with the big dogs Barcelona and Real Madrid taking the biggest slices of the pie in that aspect. Malaga were duly banned from playing in Europe the following season by financial fair play, and Al Thani was fed up with both UEFA and La Liga for the ways they managed financial issues. He decided to reel in his investment and become more of a passive owner, and players like Isco, Joaquin and Toulon began departing just a summer after Cazorla and Nacho Monreal left the club. Since then, it's been a slow downward spiral for Malaga, with reports of unpaid wages which actually caused the mass exodus, and Al Thani barely reinvested the transfer fees they received for all those players. Debts continued to increase, with Al Thani transferring some of his shares to other companies while he started to make trips abroad, with several 5-star hotels, flash cars and luxurious treatment being paid for using money from the club. Al Thani is still president of Malaga to this day, but it's said he's actually taken €8.5 million out of the club for personal use. Malaga eventually fell back into nothingness, most recently surviving in the Segunda Division by 2 points. Number 4. Notts County 2009. Notts County is a historic club, one of the oldest clubs in world football, who actually inspired the famous black and white stripes of Juventus, were never really up there with the big boys. However, in 2009, a new dawn came with the takeover of the club from unknown Middle East-backed financial firm Munto Finance. They quickly promised injections of cash previously unimaginable to county fans, and things got even crazier at Meadow Lane when all of a sudden an ex-England manager who was at the helm of the golden generation took the position of director of football as Sven-Goran Eriksson strutted in. Kasper Schmeichel signed from Man City in what was a real statement of intent from the new backers, and moves for Luis Figo, Roberto Carlos and David Beckham were said to be materialising. County didn't end up with any of them, but Arsenal invincible Sol Campbell ended up joining to take his place at the heart of the defence, and the Magpies looked on their way to something huge. Premier League dreams began to ravage the minds of supporters who'd endured so much hardship up to that point. However, after around a month of the season, things started to get a little bit strange. And just a few days after a disappointing debut, Campbell walked out and ripped up his contract as the facilities just weren't good enough for him, and this was a clear indication that something was very wrong behind the scenes. Then it emerged from a BBC investigation that there was in fact no Middle Eastern sheikh or anyone like that backing the club, rather it was the work of Russell King, a man who had already been convicted of fraud in the past. King apparently claimed to a London investment bank that he was managing the finances of the Bahraini royal family, which was the basis upon Munto Finance were actually able to purchase the club and make such lavish investments. Of course, this finance didn't actually exist, and King was exposed as a con man with debts of over £7 million being racked up. Munto Finance put the club up for sale in December 2009 and ended up receiving just £1 as King seemed eager to run run from the mess he'd created. Fans, players, and just about everyone was duped by the scheme in what proved to be one of the strangest takeovers in football history. County did win the league that season, but eventually plummeted back down as they fell outside of the Football League for the first time in their history in 2019. Number 3. Racing Santander 2011. Racing Santander endured a difficult few years towards the end of the 2000s, so it was an incredible relief when Indian businessman Hassan Ali Syed, founder of a company called Western Gulf Advisory, which is said to be worth £8 billion, took over the club. Ali immediately got rid of all the debt in the club, and he soon promised that Racing would be able to compete with the two top dogs, Real and Barca. His first step towards climbing that mountain was to sack current manager Miguel Portugal and re-sign Marcelino as head coach, a man who had brought Racing to UEFA Cup qualification before walking out just a few years prior. Ali immediately promised the new boss $50 million to spend in the summer, but soon details emerged about the legitimacy of his wealth. Ali's company, the Western Gulf Advisory, was said to be major frauds as they allegedly scammed businessmen out of millions through fraudulent loan promises. Ali soon became a fugitive on the run from authorities in Bahrain and Switzerland, yet he still remained firmly at the helm at Racing. However, it would soon be discovered that, well, he didn't want to be there at all. Ali actually planned to buy the club and sell it to the Bahraini royal family for a profit, but a deal never materialised since a meeting couldn't be arranged following the 2011 Arab Spring. From there, he simply stopped caring. Marcelino left due to unkempt promises in regards to transfers, and the club suffered successive relegations into the third tier of Spanish football. Wages ended up unpaid and grievances spilled onto the pitch during matches. Players would protest on the pitch because of their wages, and at one point the fans actually stormed the director's box to confront the chairman. They even had a wonderful run into the Copa del Rey quarter-final ended due to a protest the third tier side held against Real Sociedad. Since then, Racing have hovered around the second and third division, most recently regaining promotion to the Segunda division after winning the Primera Federación title. Hassan Ali Syed is still chairman at the club, and despite being found guilty on several charges of fraud, it doesn't look as if the Indian businessman is going anywhere for now. Number 2. Anzhi Makhachkala 2011. Remember a time about a decade ago when a seemingly unknown Russian club called Anzhi Makhachkala began signing superstars like there was no tomorrow? Roberto Carlos, Lassana Diarra and Samuel Eto'o were all suddenly donning the yellow kit, with the latter becoming the highest paid player in world football, while Gus Hiddink was brought in to manage the Dagestan outfit, who meteorically rose from absolutely nothing to become one of the best up-and-coming teams in world football. Russian businessman Suleiman Kerimov, who was worth over £10 billion, acquired a full stake of the club in 2011, just a year after their promotion to the Russian Premier League. Young blood like Alexander Kokorin, Odil Akhmedov and Willian were also brought in amongst the old stars, and Anzhi ended up qualifying for the Europa League in the 11-12 season, a feat they would repeat again in the following season. They ended up losing in the round of 16 on both occasions, losing to Newcastle and AZ Alkmaar respectively, but things came tumbling down after the defeat to AZ. Anzhi were expected to kick on in that 13-14 season, finishing 5th and then 3rd in the 2 seasons prior, but Hiddink decided to resign before the season, and stars began leaving as Kerimov appeared to reel in his crazy investment. Kokorin, Eto'o, Willian, Diarra, and a whole host of other continental quality players began leaving since Kerimov decided to cut the team's budget by 2/3, which came as a result of financial fair play complaints. This led to relegation in the 13-14 season as the team disgracefully only won 3 games in the league across the campaign, and the last of their money-grabbing stars left the club. Anzhi did get promoted back to the Premier League at the first time of asking, but Kerimov sold the club in 2016 as they were consistently embroiled in relegation battles, which culminated in the drop in 2019. However, things went from bad to worse as the club's harrowing debts meant they weren't given a license to compete in the second division, so they were forced to go down another division to the Professional Football League, the third tier of Russian football. They were average there for a few seasons before June this year, when it appeared as though the club had been dissolved as they hadn't received a license this time to play in the third division. A sad end to what has proved to be a cautionary tale about spending with zero discipline on lavish superstars. Number 1. Manchester United 2005. My number one spot goes to the most well-known example of how not to run a football club, which is of course the Glazer family and their handling of Manchester United. They took a controlling stake in 2005 in the midst of Sir Alex Ferguson's seemingly unbeatable era at Manchester United, and immediately problems started to arise. The way they purchased the club immediately put them into debt, which was something that hadn't been an issue with United for 70 years. And the debt was also astronomical, with 500 million being incurred immediately, which resulted in £60 million interest payments every single year. To pay for the club, the Glazers took out loans of 860 million in total and sort of put it all against the club, meaning things could go seriously wrong should the club's revenues drop. Nonetheless, results continue to show on the pitch, with United dominating the scene both in England and even continentally as they won the Champions League in 2008. However, several league titles and domestic trophies later, Sir Alex left United after 27 years, and the Glazers knew their game was up and that their protection was waning. See, they'd already been restricting Fergie's budget for years up to that point, but due to his excellent eye for a player and coaching methods, he could still create diamonds from dirt, as players like Alex Butner, Anderson and Darren Fletcher were all parts of title-winning sides. So it was a major problem once he left and David Moyes was appointed, and he was presented with an aging squad in which he only added one player, who was Marouane Fellaini. It was very obvious that he would fail and eventually get sacked, and even world-class managers such as Jose Mourinho and Louis van Gaal couldn't cope with the absolute mess of working for the Glazers. Things have become even worse as of late, as financial data has uncovered that not only have they spent 900 million on interest payments since taking over, but the Glazers have also taken out 150 million in dividends for shareholders. They've taken out of a company who are still $500 million in debt, yet they still have the nerve to hold their position. They've also tried to put the club in the European Super League, hired a board full of clowns, and generally ruined a once proud footballing establishment. If you're more interested in this one, I made a small sort of documentary that lasts 90 minutes detailing the spell of the Glazers. While this ownership hasn't totally killed the club like in the cases of Racing and Anzhi, it's still the most glaringly obvious sign on this list that big money takeovers won't always end up like they did at Man City or Chelsea. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought and what you want to see on the channel in the future, and I'll see you next time.